All business owners have goals, but very few business owners have a system for creating the habits that will reliably achieve these goals. Hi, I'm Dr. K, and in this presentation, I'm going to show you a system for how to achieve your business goals faster, how to stop self-sabotage or slowing down your progress, how to prevent stress, overwhelm, and burnout. And I'm going to show you how to do this with a very reliable habit-building system that I've spent the last 15 years perfecting. Now, my background is I've got a medical degree and a master's in psychological medicine, and I've spent my career mastering the science and application of habits. And I work with business owners to give them the edge to win in business by changing their habits. So in this video, I'm going to answer 3 questions. First of all, why habits matter, why you should care about them, and why they have such a big impact on your business. Secondly, which habits you should change. And thirdly, the 6-step reliable habit building system that I've been using with my clients for 15 years now. So part 1, why should a business owner care about habits when there are so many other things to worry about in your business? So to illustrate this, we're going to be speaking about Jeff, who is a hypothetical business owner. And Jeff is currently, his business has a revenue of 10K a month, 10,000 a month, and he's stuck there. It doesn't matter what he does. Some months are a little bit more, some months are a little bit less, but he generally can't seem to get beyond that 10K a month mark. So what does Jeff do? He decides he's going to set a new goal, and it's going to be an ambitious one. And he says, I'm going to double my monthly revenue in the next 12 months. So this means basically 20K a month. So this is great. This is a very impressive goal. So what happens next? Well, nothing changes. And the thing is, Jeff kind of knows what he should be doing to grow his business to achieve that revenue goal. But 3 things happen after he set the goal. Firstly, a lot of the activities he needs to do means that he has to get out of his comfort zone, and he's not obviously comfortable getting out of his comfort zone, so he puts off or doesn't do those things. Secondly, he's very busy and distracted and stressed out with the day-to-day running of his business, and so it's very difficult to make the time to do the things that he needs to do. And thirdly, he's very inconsistent in his actions. So he may do the right things for a few days in a row, but then something gets in the way, or he forgets, or he gets distracted, and so he's not able to be consistent with his actions. What this shows is that setting a big, impressive, ambitious goal isn't enough. And this applies whether you're at 10K, 20K, or 100K a month. As the author of Atomic Habits, James Clear, says, winners and losers have the same goals. We can think of a tennis player whose goal may be, or would be, to win the match. But the problem is, there's another player on the other side of the net who also wants to win the match. So having the goal of winning the match isn't enough. It's what happens on the court. It's the performance that matters. So what's actually holding Jeff back? It's himself. So let me ask you this question. Would someone whose business is earning twice as much monthly revenue as you behave differently to you? I think the answer is, of course, yes. They're probably doing things that you are not doing, and they're probably not doing things that you are. So they may have different systems to you. They might have more energy to just go about their daily activities. They may have more time to think and plan and strategize. They may be wasting less time during the day, or they may be delegating more or delegating more effectively. So, knowing that, could you suddenly wake up tomorrow and start acting like they do? Of course not. But why? Why can't you replicate what they're doing immediately? And the answer is, of course, habits. So let's define a habit. A habit is a behavior that you repeat automatically without thinking about it. So in your business, you'll have certain routines. You'll work in a certain way. You'll think in a certain way. You'll work on certain activities and tasks, and you'll ignore or avoid other tasks. You'll interact with your team in certain ways and also with your clients. And importantly, you'll also have habits that hold you back. So imagine that you watched a video that was very motivating and told you that you need to work more and you need to do it in uninterrupted bursts of time. So you decide, tomorrow I'm going to sit down and I'm going to spend 3 uninterrupted focused hours on work. The next day comes, and 5 minutes into your extended work session, you're on Instagram. You knew what to do, you had the means to do it, but what stopped it? The answer is, of course, habits. Example 2. So some people will think, well, if I have a team behind me, then I don't need to really worry about my own habits because all I need to do is just delegate to the team. But even delegation is a habit. Do you micromanage your team? Do you give them vague instructions that they find hard to follow? Do you overwhelm your team with too much work to do all at the same time? Or do you end up doing it all yourself? These are all habits. So what does this show? It shows that all the will in the world, all the knowledge, and even an army of employees is not going to save you unless you change your habits. Businesses that seem to hit a ceiling and never grow beyond it are stuck, not because the owner and the business can't grow, but because the current version of the owner and the business can't do it. So part 2, which habits should I change when it appears like lots of things in my business and myself need changing? So we're back to Jeff. Which habits should he change? Well, if Jeff was a real person, what I would do is I would get on a Zoom call with him and we would have a session and I would ask more about Jeff's daily routine and what he does in his business. So for instance, what I want to know is what's his schedule? What time does he wake up? What time does he start work? What time does he knock off for the? What are the activities and tasks that he does during his workday? What's his work environment like? Which tasks get easily done and which tasks get avoided? And these questions are not to give him a hard time. They're just to find out what are the patterns of behavior, because it's only by understanding that we can start to make changes. I also want to know the roadblocks. So are there things not getting done in the business that need to get done, and what is preventing the business getting to the next level? Most business owners never take the time to do this. It's like if you were working on your laptop and there's a big black box blocking part of the screen. Now you know it's there, you know it's affecting your work because obviously it's hard to see part of the screen and do your work with that box there, but it's like you ignore it or dismiss it or just try and soldier on without it, instead of actually figuring out what's the problem here and how do I solve it. So Jeff realizes that the big problem in his business that's stopping it growing is not enough lead generation and poor client retention. Now these are very common problems that a lot of business owners would find, but the question is, what is Jeff doing to fix it? How is Jeff's time spent? And what happens is Jeff finds that I don't have enough time to focus on growing the business, so there's a time problem there. There are so many other things to do each day. And he also says that even when I sit down to work, I procrastinate. I'm distracted by other things and find it hard to focus. So basically for Jeff, there's no time, there's low priority tasks taking up time, and there's no focus. What's the effect of this? In the moment, it's a little frustrating if you don't have enough time, you're stressed or you're distracted, but if you zoom out a little and look at the entire business, it's much more serious. Because time is ticking away, goals are no closer to being achieved, and the business is stagnating. It's like the competition has got their foot on the gas and you are driving with the handbrake on. And why would anyone drive with the handbrake on? But the worst effect of this is on you. What I've seen is when a business is stagnating, it affects the owner. It drains your energy, it drains your initiative, stops you being proactive, and you start to lose belief in yourself. This may not feel like an emergency, but it is. You can end up wasting years of your life if you're stuck in this way. So let's go through each of Jeff's challenges. The first one, as you remember, is no time. So a lot of clients will come to me and say that they don't have time to spend on the activities that will grow their business. But what I often find is it's not that they don't have time, but their time is spent on things like busy work, or a lot of time is wasted. And you may have heard of the expression, the very worst use of your time is to do something extremely well that didn't need to be done at all. There's often inefficiency in the use of time. There's a lack of focus. And so if you're not focused, then your work is not of high quality and things take longer than they need to. There's a distraction in focus, and there's also a lack of delegation. what most people will find is you don't lack time, you're just not using it properly. And remember, the person making twice what you are has the same 24 hours a day. So the second challenge is low priority tasks taking up time. So if someone was working through a list, and a lot of people don't work through a list, but if they are, what you'll often find is that they're working through the list sequentially, so they have no priorities. They may focus on the easiest tasks first and avoid or put off the more difficult tasks, or they may find that their task list is so big and overwhelming that they just get overwhelmed by it and end up distracting themselves with other activities or checking social media or that sort of thing. Instead, what you want to do is set one priority each day, and that priority should be the thing that has the biggest direct impact on improving or increasing your revenue. And it should be an activity that you routinely neglect. Make that your priority for the day. Make sure it gets done no matter what. And the third challenge is that Jeff feels too distracted. So what do you do if you can't focus? I believe that you need to develop the ability to do deep work. And if you don't know what deep work is, it's a term coined by Cal Newport in the book titled Deep Work, and it's the ability to focus without distraction on a cognitively demanding task. Why is this important? Because being able to sit down and intensely focus for a few hours at a time is a superpower that will help you run circles around your competition. Imagine if it ordinarily takes you several weeks to get a task done because you have to string together small scraps of time that are stolen throughout the day. Now imagine if you're able to sit down and focus completely for 3 hours and achieve that one task in a morning. Imagine what you could get done. Not only would you be doing more, but the quality of work would be much higher. And imagine doing that day after day. The sky would be the limit. But you can't just decide I'm going to do deep work and then sit down tomorrow and suddenly do 3 hours of deep work. You need to develop the habit. So now I'm going to tell you what I've spent years figuring out for my clients, the most reliable way to develop a habit. And it comes down to 6 steps. So part 3 is how do I change my habits as reliably as possible? So as I said, there are 6 steps to changing a habit. Let's use deep work as the example. So step 1, you wouldn't drive a car with a blacked out windscreen for obvious reasons. And so when changing a habit, you want to keep track. When you start a new habit, you want to track when you're doing it. As you may have heard, what gets measured gets managed. You want to know how often you're doing it, so you're not just getting a vague impression or tricking yourself into believing you're doing it more than you are. But more importantly, you also want to know when you're not doing the behavior, because there'll be a reason why you're not doing it. There's something interfering with it, and we need to figure out what that is to correct it, to enable you to keep repeating the behavior enough times for it to become a habit. But tracking is just the beginning, because step 2 is arguably the most important part of making a habit stick. So step 2, the way that you ensure a habit gets done is to have a trigger to start the habit. Without a clear trigger, a prompt, the habit lacks context and structure, making it much easier to forget or skip. So the example would be, when you go into the bathroom in the morning, as soon as you see the bathroom sink, you probably automatically reach for your toothbrush and toothpaste. But if you were in the park and it was the same time in the morning, you're not thinking about your toothbrush or your toothpaste. This is because the environment, the bathroom, creates the context for toothbrushing and acts as a trigger to do the habit. Think of all the times you may have wanted to do a new habit and just plain forgot to do it. The trigger is what signals your brain to initiate the new behavior, and so without it, you're relying purely on willpower to remember to perform the habit, and that's not good enough. So in this example, Jeff is going to make the trigger for doing deep work the moment that he sits down at his desk for the first time in the morning. But there's something else that will make your trigger much more powerful, and that's step 3. Let your environment help you. So imagine if you had the goal of eating healthier, but in your kitchen were stacks and stacks of chocolate bars. How easy would it be to eat healthier? It would obviously be much more difficult. So you want to let your environment support deep work. If you want to focus on deep work, but your workspace is cluttered and full of distractions, it will be challenging to maintain concentration. What this shows is your surroundings affect your actions. Make your environment help you, not hurt you. As Sun Tzu said in The Art of War, to win 100 battles is not the height of skill, to subdue the enemy without fighting is. So instead of continually fighting yourself, using willpower to try and make yourself do what you should be doing, use the environment to enable you to do it without even needing to fight yourself. And I'm a real fan of changing environments for particular tasks. So for example, you may have a particular place where you open your laptop and you check your emails, and you may have a different place where you do deep work. So remember, Jeff wants to do deep work. So how we're going to change the environment to help him is he's going to have a deep work ritual. And what that involves is closing unnecessary tabs and windows on his computer, turning off notifications on his phone, closing the door to his office, and perhaps even using deep work appropriate music. This ritual acts as a trigger to get into deep work mode. But if you aren't in the habit of doing long stretches of work like this, it's not enough to rely on the environment and the trigger, because sitting down to concentrate like this when it's not a habit is not easy. This is where step 4 comes in. So introducing new habits that you've never done before, or stopping bad habits that you've been doing for years, is very overwhelming. It's very difficult. For example, imagine someone deciding to try and meditate for 20 minutes a day. So they sit down and they do it once. They sit down for 20 minutes and meditate, and they find that the whole time their thoughts are racing, it feels uncomfortable, it feels really difficult, and at the end of the 20 minutes they feel like they've failed because they spent most of the time thinking about other things. What are their chances of doing the meditation again tomorrow? Probably very low, because they feel like they failed. But was it actually a failure? I don't think so. I don't think they failed. I think the problem was trying to do too much too soon, trying to do 20 minutes when you're not used to doing it at all. So back to Jeff, who wants to do deep work. I would advise him to think big, but start small. Start with the tiniest amount of deep work you can do. I would say 30 seconds. And most people, when I say that, go 30 seconds, and I say, yes, 30 seconds. Start small. So Jeff sets the intention of doing 30 seconds of deep work each day. Does he do it? Chances are, of course he does, because it's just 30 seconds. And then the next day, ask him to do it again. Repeat, do 30 seconds again. Does he do it? Of course, again, it's just 30 seconds. When you set the behavior for such a small amount, it's very easy to do it consistently. And then once you're doing it consistently, you can ramp it up. So you can go from 30 seconds to a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, all the way up to 2 hours, even 3 hours. The beauty of this small wins approach is that it's very doable. The fact that you can do it consistently builds confidence. It creates a pleasant experience. It's very easy to repeat. It's flexible, so even if you've got a very busy day, you can still do that small amount. And it lays the foundation for massive change. You can go from 30 seconds to 2 hours, 3 hours, in a way that you would struggle to do otherwise. When it comes to creating a new habit, there's an expression from the military which is slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So by starting slow and establishing that habit, you get into a smooth pattern of behavior, and then you can ramp it up much faster than if you tried to jump to doing the large amount straight away. When it comes to ramping up the habit, you want to be patient but relentless. So following this plan will help you to create consistency, but there's often a risk of getting stuck at a lower level, or going too slow, or not pushing yourself enough to actually harness your potential and the businesses. So that's why step 5 is so important. Imagine a business owner who says, I want to keep up to date with my industry, or my business is going to be left behind. So keeping up to date, this needs to become a regular habit. But this owner has a problem. Everyday work keeps getting in the way. So they listen to the first part of this presentation, so they have a trigger, they control their environment, they keep track, and they start doing the habit in small amounts. But what usually happens next? These are the possible outcomes, and think back to times when you've tried to start a new habit and see if any of these apply to you. So they may do the behavior for a couple of days and then just forget about it because something else got in the way. And I'm sure that's happened to almost everyone who's tried to start a new habit. There may be something that prevents them from doing the behavior. And instead of figuring out what that is, they just let it go. The behavior may not work at all. So the way that they decided to try and keep up to date with the developments in the industry, it wasn't the right way to do it. But instead of replacing it, they just stopped doing it altogether. Or they might do the habit for a few weeks, but then lose motivation and stop. Or they may keep it at a very low level and not ramp it up at all. So start doing, say, a few minutes a day, but then never get up to more than that. Or they may develop the habit, and that's all great, but then they miss the opportunity to add more habits to that. And that's something I'll talk about shortly. What this shows is that successful habit change requires structure, or it's very easy for something to get in the way. So the structure is, firstly, make a small change to behavior, do the behavior, review what happened, adjust the behavior to take into account what happened, and then slowly but surely ramp up the behavior. And while it's certainly possible to do this on your own, and you've probably done it before for certain habits, to do it consistently, I believe it's much easier with help. So if you can get someone to help you set the actions for the week, review each week to see what happened, make adjustments, ramp it up, keep you accountable, push you to keep going, encourage you when you inevitably get discouraged somewhere along the way, and illuminate the path forward. Without someone being there, checking in, and I think most importantly, pushing you to keep improving, it's too easy to not get anywhere, stagnate, go backwards, and ultimately struggle. But even once you've changed a habit, there's something else that the most consistently successful do. It's a way of thinking of systems versus goals that can change your life. And that's step 6. So remember, Jeff's goal was to double his revenue, and that's a great goal, but there is a downside to goals. So to paraphrase Oscar Wilde, who said, there are 2 tragedies in life, not getting what you want and getting it. Similarly, there are 2 tragedies in goals. And tragedy of goals 1 is, each month that you don't reach your revenue goal, the more discouraging it is, and motivation is likely to be replaced with apathy and despondence. And if you think back to times when you ever gave up on a goal prematurely, so in hindsight you realized you gave up too soon, it was simply because you'd set a goal and you were over-focused on the fact that you hadn't achieved it yet. That's what caused the discouragement. The second tragedy of goals is if you actually do get to the goal, and you'll find this with lots of people, they reach that goal and they think, is this all there is? So I strongly recommend you replace the endpoint goal with the goal of constant improvement. You're not trying to achieve something, you're trying to keep improving day after day. Improvement is the goal, and with constant improvement, the benefits are you are succeeding every day you improve, so you can literally succeed every day, as opposed to an endpoint goal where you don't succeed until the very end. And also, by focusing on constant improvement, you will indirectly achieve all of your business goals. It just happens as a byproduct of the constant improvement. And one thing that goes hand in hand with constant improvement is the habit stack. I believe that creating a stack of habits, building one habit on top of the other, deliberately choosing which habits you create, and building on past successes is the cheat code. Imagine 2 people. One is stuck doing what they've always done, but the other is a habit-building machine. Every day, every week, they are slowly but surely improving, 1% a day, ongoing, adding new habits that make them better and better across the board. So imagine Jeff here, he now has a deep work habit. But what if, on top of that, he also improved his sleep habits, so he had increased energy during the day. He improved his communication with clients. He made that into a habit, so that improved client retention in his business. He had habits of better communication with team members, so he had better staff retention. He started a habit of regular meditation, which contributed to clarity of mind. Imagine if he had a habit of regularly reviewing and refining his lead generation activities so that his lead generation was improved. And he also found the regular time for reviewing industry developments, which also contributed to improved lead generation. What if he had a more regular and effective habit of exercise, which gave him more energy and a better mood? And what if he also changed his email, Slack, or Basecamp usage habits so that he was less distracted? Imagine what these habits could do to the owner and to the business. And this list can go on indefinitely because you can always improve. And this is my aim for every client I see, to help them to create an ever-improving habit stack that keeps them on the road of getting better and better each day. Rather than just setting goals and wondering why you're still not getting there as fast as you want, use this reliable system of developing your habits. It really is the key to ongoing and accelerating success in business, work, and life. So if you'd like my one-to-one help to change habits in your business, then check out the description below and I'll hopefully speak with you soon.